All right. Good evening, everyone. What's today's date? Oh, the 9th already. Man, we're flying by. Already a year into the new year. So welcome everyone. The 9th. I'm just gonna go over the email real quick and then we'll get Jim tying for us. Jim will be tying the Blue Wing Olive, a very cool traditional fly or a dry fly pattern. Fun. It's absolutely beautiful pattern, fun to tie. Not too difficult and catches fish most of all too. So we'll go through with that. We had our fishing outing. I know got one more coming in real quick. Uh let's pick another time. I know we have you guys want to try to sneak out this week? Well, no, I don't think we're going to do this weekend. I saw the weather. So
Yeah,
let's
it's supposed to be
scratch
cold.
that. It's supposed to be single digits. So
Whoa.
Well, we got 8 inches of snow up here.
yeah, we don't have snow yet. Well, it was snowing earlier, but
We've got about a half an inch on the ground here.
okay. So we could kind of live with that, but those single digit temperatures are a little bit too cold. So
We're going into the minuses. Some
yes,
have said minus 16.
yeah, so it's going to be cold.
Yeah,
I
maybe
might
we'll get
try
to do some hard water fishing.
Yeah,
I need to go. I need to go south.
I'm gonna
Well,
see.
John, if you want to come south, come on.
Yeah, I'll see if there's like a fishing game for Nintendo or something, and I'll
All right. I like it.
Yep. Hey, you got to think out of the box.
There you go.
So, all right. So, fishing outing, we'll have to see. The good news that I started talking to some of you already. I went to a fishing show over the weekend in Collinsville, and I found this gentleman who does fly fishing guides near St. Louis. I just double checked my email, and I got 2 emails from him already. So I got to double check after our meeting. But he does will take you out to the Merrimack and smallmouth and all that. But I'm kind of interested in he does St. Louis urban fishing, which is primarily looking at gar and carp. And we have John here that does a Great Plains bonefish tournament for carp. And you may not want to eat them, but man, they're fun to fight on a rod. So I think we might be able to find something fun to do close during the summer where we don't have to worry about trying to travel long distances, and we'll have a good time with it. So,
Well, I'll tell you what, everybody says carp is terrible. I'm here to tell you, if it's properly prepared, if it's properly done, I've tasted carp that you swore to God you were eating tuna fish.
and that sounds good. I just don't know if I'd want St. Louis carp.
Well, it depends. You got to look at the water it comes out of.
Yeah, anything around here, no. And then even my old, my company, old company, McDonnell Douglas, I guess we developed the A-bomb here, and there's a lot of runoff in some of the areas around here that those fish have 2 heads and 3 tails, so which would make for a great fight, but I'm not going to eat it. But I do have friends that eat carp, and I would say if we were a little bit further out, I would absolutely give it a try, because the other thing that he goes for is gar, and we do see those at some of the places we go, and found out it's considered like the poor man's scallop, the way you clean it and prepare it. It's supposed to be, if you like gator tail, it tastes a lot like gator tail. So, just something different to do. I know I'm guilty of, pushing trout fishing, a lot, and we need to kind of do a little bit more bass and panfish and all that. And maybe this will give us one other thing to chase around that we don't have to drive 2 hours for. So after after our meeting, I'll give him a quick respond back, just trying to chat with him. And I know Jim and I have already talked about that, where I'll try to set up a guide service where the 2 of us will go out with them. Jim's very familiar with fishing off kayaks and all that, which I've never done. So I'd kind of like Jim there to kind of figure out, look towards him a little bit to make sure I'm not doing anything stupid. So, but so that's something I'm looking forward to. So hopefully we'll have something new going on when the weather starts warming up. Fly tying in person, JB again. We do that on Mondays, but everyone here, I'll have to make sure I get this email out right away. Next Monday is a holiday, so we will not be tying at JB. So please don't show up because there will be no one there. But other Mondays, we tie from 6 to 7. It's an absolutely blast helping out the veterans, and they're absolutely new to this. So even I had Matt helping me. He's only been tying a little bit over a month, but he was there tying with us and helping out some of the veterans as well. So you guys are able to come and help out. We have a good time. That's from 6 to 7, building 54, which is the gym. We try to get there about 5:30, just kind of set up, but Kurt usually has everything up, and setup is probably maybe 15 minutes. And then if you're going to be one of the tires, you'll have to get, what you want to tie for that evening. I always try to think about something the night before. I was doing mop flies last night and had a good time with that. We also have Frank helped us again with the American Legion 208. So we were just there this past Saturday. That was a good time. It's always a good time for the participants. If you need to learn how to do a pattern, we're going to be more than happy to do that for you. We'll go over basic tools if you want, or if you just want some of those times it's a forced break for me where I could actually try to refill up my fly box after fishing, and I just don't have time. So this is kind of a forced time to get out there and fill up the fly box. So again, Frank, thank you for helping us with that. It is
Thanks,
much
Frank.
appreciated.
Next, I looked at the calendar today, Mick, and every weekend next month is open
Okay,
so far. So
maybe
come up
we'll
with a
start.
date, let me know.
Okay, I don't know where I put it, but I finally got a new calendar and I lost it already. But I'll have to start looking, and probably maybe the first or second Saturday or Sunday in February, we'll shoot for that.
Okay, let me know.
Yep.
What days are we doing the rod building on in
Oh yeah, that's
February?
right. So it'll have to be a Sunday. So because Saturdays are rod building, so we'll probably pick a Sunday, to do that. So
Okay.
good call, Eddie. Thank you for keeping me in line.
Hey, Mick.
Yes, sir.
Hey, a couple things. I can't be on the call too long. We had something getting delivered to our house here a little bit. So just
That's fine.
quick. Is there anything we need to talk about the rod building class? Like anything like that? Or do you want to just circle back later with me on that?
Maybe you, Jim, and I'll see if I could pick a time that works for the three of us to kind of talk. So I'm kind of leaving that up to you and Jim as the leads on that. I'm just here to whatever you guys need, I'm going to make sure you guys have. But
Okay.
and I know how to build rods and all that, but this is kind of a nicety for me to kind of be more almost like I feel like I'm the volunteer and you guys are the leads on this. So but
Okay,
the good news
I guess more of my thing of just we can talk about it, just like number of people, how many participants, that sort of stuff.
Yep. And
Protocol, that.
I will give you guys an email after this, and I will give you the list of names. Last time I checked, we had 8, but there were several people that I noticed that always sign up for stuff, and then I never see them. So I'm guessing we're going to have probably around 6 people, and then maybe, a couple people might try to sneak in, but we have the ability to do 8 rods. So,
yeah. All right. Okay. All right, that's fine. Let's just circle back later on an email or something, and we can.
I'll do that. The good news is we have all the materials. We've got the blanks, we have the guides, we have the seats, we have the handles, we've got the epoxy, we have all the jigs, and Jim's going through all the jigs right now to make sure everything's, all the equipment's up and running and good to go. So, for us being, out, we're sitting really well. So,
Has Ken definitely made reservations for the church?
yes, he
Oh, excellent.
absolutely. We've got Saturdays through February. That's good to go. So
Great.
everything, we're good. So basically now after this, I'll see what we have going on. Well, I'll probably send out 2 emails, one to you guys and then one to those who said they're interested on rod building, and just kind of confirm, let them know it's over 4 consecutive Saturdays and we need you there. You might be able to get away that you miss 1 class, but if you're going to miss 2, you've missed half of it, and it's really hard to get you caught back up. So,
Yeah, okay. And then if you want next Monday, or no, excuse me, next Tuesday, I can do I would do some, I'll volunteer to do some flies from Pat Dorsey's stuff and talk about the meeting that the presentation he did on Saturday next week, if you want, just to throw
that would be perfect. I think that would be absolutely great for that. For those of you who we were at American Legion this Saturday, I didn't know until last minute that Ozark Fly Fishers had a big all-day meeting, and they had Pat Dorsey there. And I was like, oh my gosh, next time I see Dan Rash, who sometimes attends our meetings here, and say, why did you not contact me and get some of our veterans there? Guy's a great fly tire, has some great midge patterns. And so luckily Carl was able to attend. So he'll give us kind of a little,
yeah, I'll put together 2 or 3 of his flies that he did and just kind of go over try to put a synopsis on his approach.
Cool.
So anyway, that'd be a good meeting to have.
I think it would be a great meeting, and that's perfect. So thank you for doing that. So
Yeah, of course.
you don't have to worry about that next week as well. So everything's going pretty easy. So,
Okay. Well, good deal. Well, I need to jump. I'll circle back with
Yep.
you and Jim later. And sorry, I'm missing your Blue Wing Olive, Jim, but I'm sure you will do well.
yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, see you. Bye.
Bye. I still have some materials in storage. I need to kind of bug my buddy, Tom Hargrove. Usually he gets donations, and that's where I get, kind of build up some of our materials. So, I think we're good, but if you need anything, please let me know. I could run to the storage and see what we got. Jim gave me a donation that was to us. It was actually a patio heater. So I'm going to start putting that up on Facebook Marketplace, and whatever money I get for that, I will then turn around and buy beads and hooks. So that's coming. And then that way I could help you guys out as well. All right. So again, I'll have to update the calendar at a glance, because I also know, and this is coming March, and funding, I'm hearing conflicting stuff. If we could still do overnight trips if we self-funded ourselves. So that's still available. I don't know what kind of funding we're going to have or anything like that. That's still up in the air. But I plan to go on a trip to Mountain Home, Arkansas in March. And I will get you the dates and everything. It's called the Sow Bug Roundup. It's a really cool tie-in event. Goes over 3 days. So I plan on taking that Friday off, probably Thursday as well. And then I think Margie's coming with me. Anyone else who wants to go, we'll figure it out. We'll drive up or down Thursday, and then spend Friday, Saturday, and then probably we won't stay Sunday. We might go for a little bit, but that'll be a travel day back. But we'll have 2 days at the show. They usually have great guest speakers and all that. And we could, some of those days maybe do half day at the show, and then there's some really good fishing there as well too. So I will have info coming up, but it's called the Sow Bug Roundup. Something they do every year, and it's a kind of just fun show, see different tires and different stuff that's out there. So I will get you guys info on that as well. All right, and then probably last, but definitely not least, because they put on one hell of a good Zoom meeting, Omaha. Again, John, thank you for inviting us for that. They usually get good guest speakers, and they always do theirs on Thursdays, same time as us, from 6 to 7. At the very bottom of the email I send out, I've got the meeting ID and passcode for you. And what's going on this week, John? That if you want to up your
Okay, we've completely changed our approach this for 2024.
okay.
Whereas we used to, Mike would come on and 3 out of the 4 weeks he would tie a fly. We're changing that now. Last week was a tips and hints. This week is a viewer's choice. Anybody has a fly that they would like to see tied or learn how to tie or see demonstrated by Mike, this is your chance to do that. And then of course we'll do our hybrid. Our teaching class will be on the 3rd Thursday of the month, and we're in the beginning series right now. And then the 4th week of the month we'll be back to viewer's choice. So
Cool.
and if nobody has a choice, then Mike will pick a fly and he'll tie it. So
Yeah, and I'll always make sure I got my gear here too. And if Mike's like, I need a break, I could tie up a fly as well too. So, but yeah, last week's was fun. That was a good meeting for those who were able to make it. It was just tips and tricks. So everyone was saying, oh, check out this. And, I guess mine I brought up again. If you guys need some, I have these binders that help, you cut the little tabs off, and that way you could see John's got them too. And so your
Okay.
thread doesn't go unraveling when you have them on, your storage spools. So,
that
I
was
got
the
a
best
photo
tip
of
I've had in
those.
a long time, Mick. I tell you, that was a super tip.
yeah.
Yeah,
We passed it
I got
on to Al and a couple of other folks that we know, and everybody was really impressed with it. So
Yeah, and so you guys know, I just couldn't buy a couple. I'm 100. So I'm gonna stick a couple of these, and these are all they are, and you just cut them.
Yeah, they're for binders, aren't they?
What's that?
They're for binders, aren't they?
Yeah, for binders. Yeah, they're for binders, and you just cut them across, and then they just hold your thread in. So, like I said, I probably used 4, so that means I got 96 more. There's probably about 20 you'll get per tab. So I will make sure my truck has, a bunch of these. So if we're out and about and you're like, hey, Mick, do you have some? I'm going to make sure I have some though. That way you guys, I could give you out some. And I've
Hey,
tried
Mick?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of old materials on wood spools that just like to come loose wherever they want to go. There's no notches in them.
Mm-hmm.
If I could pick up a couple, that'd be great. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll send you the postage, whatever, however you want to do it. Send me an email. I'll coordinate with
hey,
you.
Bill, can you see that right there?
It looks like John
I
bought
can't.
some.
No, I can't, John. Or just
That's a whole
text me a
box of 'em.
picture of it.
That's a whole
John's
box
got a
of 'em.
bunch of them.
Now, you want to text me a picture of that?
No, I'll just bring them Wednesday.
So
Oh, Wednesday. Oh, yeah, that's right. We're in Lincoln, aren't we? I'll just buy them. I mean,
yeah. So I've got some. If anyone needs some, just let me know. I'm going to keep a bunch in the truck. And again, if you have a stack of them, like I have 2 racks up there, they start really unraveling and get a little crazy. So neat little tip. I'm trying to think if there was another tip that I thought that was really cool. I
I
can't
even told my wife, who's a sewer, about it.
Oh, cool. So, and Scott actually showed me on Facebook, there's actually some silicone ones that you could actually buy that are for that purpose alone. But I think you get 100 of them, and it's the same price what I paid for that box. But I've got 100 of those binders times, so like almost 2,000 compared. So, but now you guys don't have to. I was trying to do math and had to take off my socks, count toes. So, Yeah, but there were some good tips, and I know in the middle of the night, oh, I remember the cool tip, but there were some really good tips, and it was a fun, so maybe in a couple months we'll do it again, and we'll definitely invite the Omaha guys to show up to kind of help do that again, because that was a really fun meeting. So, but one thing I got to do right now is be quiet because I am taking up Jim's time. So I've talked enough. So Jim, I will let you get with the Blue Wing Olive. And so here you go. I'm gonna spotlight for everyone. All right, Jim, you're good to go.
Who's
Yeah,
this?
so-
Who's this cyborg?
Well, I'll tell you about that, buddy.
We are bored.
My eyes, I can't see without them. So yeah, so I'm going to tie a blue wing olive, and blue wing olive is a imitation of a dry fly. It's a classic Catskill style dry fly, which basically means the what we usually think of as a dry fly, a mayfly imitation, with the hackle collar that is perpendicular from the shank. It's been around, I'm sure it's been around for 120, 150 years. The American scene of dry fly fishing kind of got started in the Catskills. Theodore Gordon is considered the father of American dry fly fishing, and he kind of started the ball rolling. And there's just a gazillion patterns that are Catskill style, and it includes the Quill Gordon and the Light Cahills and the March Browns, and it just goes on and on. But anyway, it's when it comes to mayfly patterns, I tie more of these than any other pattern by far. And one of the main reasons is first of all, they are very common in Missouri here. And I'm not real good at identifying flies, but the few times that I have managed to catch a fly and look at it, they have been blue wing olives. So I know they're there, and I know these work. And so it's a great pattern. I usually tie them in 14s, 16s, 18s, occasionally a 20, but honestly, I've never had much luck with the 20s. And it's kind of one of the closer you get to colder weather, the smaller you want to fish them. So like in the springtime, fishing 18s, later on 16s, summertime 14s, and when it gets hot, it eat 12s. They're going after terrestrials and stuff like that. So, and then as things start cooling off, you start fishing the smaller ones again. And I'm going to tie a size 12. And again, I don't normally tie these, but two advantages. You'll be able to see it better, and it will also give me the ability to demonstrate the traditional way to tie it with the traditional materials and the traditional techniques. So as far as materials to tie it, I'm going to use Umpqua U001 hooks. And my thread is a unithread, 8/0 unithread. If you're going to use something measured in denier, I would go with 70 denier. The body is dubbing, and I use superfine dubbing. And this dubbing is exactly what it says. So it's waterproof. So I'm sure it's totally synthetic. But if you can see, this is just a very fine material. And it's very easy to work with. If you have problems with dubbing, this is probably the easiest material to dub with. The finer the material, the easier it is to dub with. It's that material that starts getting coarse. It's got antron in it, or it's got hare's mask in it, or whatever. That becomes a lot more difficult to dub. But this stuff is, even when before I could dub very easily, I never had a problem with stuff. And then the tail and the hackle collar and the wings are all come from a dry fly cape. Now this gray, this is called dun. And it's got all the feathers that I need to tie this fly. So as you're looking at a dry fly cape here, start out at the top, there are very big feathers up here. Get down to the bottom, there's very small feathers. And up at the top, these feathers right here, they're very big, they're very thick, and they're very webby. So, I mean, you could use that for schlapping, you could use that for tails on poppers and stuff like that, but you're not going to be able to do much on dry flies with that. So you start working your way down, the feathers get smaller. As you start coming down, say about maybe a quarter way, especially to the outside, you start getting feathers that are still fairly big, but with less web on it. So if I can show you one of those. So something like that. I don't know how well you can see that. But anyway, so these feathers down here are good. They have long fibers, not much web. That's good tailing material. And then let's start at the other end. All these little feathers down here, this is great for the hackle collar material. So you start out down the bottom, and these feathers, I bet you I could tie 22s, maybe even 24 with some of those. And then you start working your way up, and you're into the 18s, and then the 16s, and the 14s, and then the 12s. And then you get above there, and there's kind of a no man's land. So, I mean, for instance, this cape right here, so I got a big empty spot right here. And that's where all the size 12 feathers were for the hackle collar. So I'm guessing I did a lot of those, because that's pretty bald right there, because everything below there is 14s and smaller. Everything above is 10s and above. But that is the area where we get the material for the wings themselves. I mean, you have a big feather, but there's a very nice shape to them, a curve to them. They're not pointed, and you take an entire feather out, and all you're going to use is the very tip. And it seems like, well, that would be a waste of feather, but there's really not a whole lot else you can do with it, and there's just so many of them, so it's not a big deal. So that's basically all the material right there. Let's get to the close-up camera. And so, like I say, this is what most people think of when they talk about a dry fly. It's got a hackle tail here. It's got the hackle collar perpendicular to the shank, and it's got upright wings. And this is a dubbed body. So as we look at the wings head on, you see they're in a V pattern. So this is what we're going to try to put together. So we will start with our size 12 hook. This was an interesting batch of hooks because the U101s are, they have, or the 001s, they come with barbs. So I'm going to cut, mash that barb. But as I look in there, they also have, I think it's called 001's BL, stands for barbless. And this pack has some with barbs and some that are barbless. So it's convenient. There's fewer hooks that I'm going to have to debar in there. So I've never seen that before. I'm sure it's just a manufacturing mistake, but in my favor. Okay, so we're gonna start our thread just a little ways behind the eye. I usually use about the width of an eye behind there to start it. And we're gonna cover up a little of that. Now, depending on how you tie and what size it is, sometimes it's better if you tie the tail on first. Sometimes it's better if you tie the wing on first. In this case, with a big fly like this, I think I'm going to go with the wing first. But as they start getting smaller and smaller, I have more of a tendency to tie the tail on first, just simply because depending on your wing material, you end up with a large bump here and you run out of room to tie that tail material. So before I started this, I took the liberty of already picking out the feathers that we needed because I found that it took too much time for me to just sit there and try to pick out the perfect feathers. So let me get the wing material. So here's the feather that I'm using for the wing. Again, this is a pretty big feather considering we're only going to use the tip. But again, this stuff in here, it's too short to be using it for a collar, and I'm sure you could find something to do with it, but we're just going to use the very tip. So we're going to take these two feathers, we're going to put them together, shiny side together. And you can see the natural bend is that they splay outwards if you put them this way. So we're going to take advantage of that and put them together. Then I'm going to take them by the tips here. I'm going to get the tips even. I'm going to hold it closer and I'm going to look for a measurement for the wing size. And what I'm looking for are wings that are about as long as the hook shank. Now that's talking about from behind the eye to the bend of the hook. So that's it right about there. So now I'm going to take the tips by the tip and I'm going to pull back the fibers below that. I'm going to try this back. You measure it. And that's pretty good right there. So that's a good size. So now I'm going to hold on to those tips and I'm going to strip some of those fibers out. So strip out whatever, 1/2 inch or so. And that's just really going to be a tie-in point. So to get them stripped out, I am going to cut off the bottom part of the feather because we don't need that. Get the rest of those out of there. then I want to tie it in right about at the 1/3 point. So this is where you can take your pair of scissors and use it for a measurement. So I'm thinking this is about 1/3 right here. You go down here, yeah, there's another third. So that's close to being 1/3. So you just use this as a measuring device. And I am going to tie the feathers in and hold them right on top of the hook rather than the usual holding it on my side of the hook. And I'm going to do a soft wrap. And as I do the soft wrap, I'm going to pull those feathers back up on top because it does want to travel around there. And then I'm going to tighten up and I'll do a few more wraps going backwards. Cut that excess off. Cover it up. Come back towards the tie-in point. And when I get to the tie-in point, I'm going to lift those feathers back and up and back. And then I'm going to create a little dam in front of those feathers. And this is going to coax those feathers into standing straight up, hopefully. Okay, and again, we want those feathers to splay out, if I can. So to splay out basically in a V like that. So we're going to do sometimes you'll put it on there and they will do that naturally. But a lot of times we want to put in a couple of cross wraps. I'm going to cut off these things in front. Don't think I'm going to need those. So what I will usually do is I will take my bodkin and I will put it in between the two feathers. I'm going to come up over the top and a fairly loose wrap. I'll wrap over the bodkin, bring it down the other side and down. I'm going to do the same thing from the back to the front. So you're doing a cross wrap. And a lot of times that is all you need. So that actually looks pretty good. Let me see if I can show you from the front. Again, that's a good angle. So we're going to leave it just like that. We're going to come back a little ways. And I have the feather that I use for the tailing material. So again, I'm looking for the finished tail. I want that to be, again, about the same length as the shank of the hook. So those fibers right there are longer. So that's long enough to give us a tail as long as I want, plus a tie-in. So these we're kind of looking for is fibers that are at least 1/8 or so inch longer than the shank. And then I'm going to take those fibers, brush them down so they're perpendicular to the stem. I'm going to grab them by the very tips. Hold on tightly. Just pull the stem. And they held together very nicely. There's little curly cues at the end. I usually cut those off. And again, we're looking for a measurement. So with my right hand, I'm going to hold it against the shank of the hook. And I usually favor on just a little bit longer than the shank of the hook. So that's a pretty good measurement right there. I want that. I want this. Let me see if we can see. I want to make sure that we can see that. So I want this point to be sitting right above the bend of the hook. So I'm going to put it over the bend of the hook with my right hand. My left hand, I'm going to pick them up now. And now I am going to bring the feather on my side of the hook, facing down a little bit at maybe a 10-degree angle. I'm going to start with a soft wrap. Second time around, I'm going to tighten it up. That brings the fibers right on top of the hook. Now I'm going to hold on to those fibers. I'm going to hold them up and away. And I'm going to wrap down to the bend of the hook. Come on. As I get close to the bend of the hook, I'm going to try to make sure that my wraps are not too tight, because it's almost like deer hair. If you get it too tight, those fibers are going to want to splay. And I want to keep them together as much as possible. So okay, now I'm back to like halfway between the wing and the tail. And I'm going to start dubbing. Now, like I talked about, superfine is very easy to dub with. And if you're using like a coarse dubbing, see if I can demonstrate this here. If you're using a coarse dubbing like this, you usually prepare it by, it's like a taffy pull. You pull the pieces apart and put them together, pull them apart, put them together, pull them apart, put them together. And that helps get the fibers parallel to each other. And they will dub easier if they are parallel with the thread rather than just in a mishmash there. But this stuff, especially with this container, when you pull it out, it's actually pulling those fibers straight. So you don't really have to do much of any prep. So right here, this is here. So you just take the smallest amount at a time. It's going to be easier to dub. I want to get a noodle on there, probably maybe two and a half inches. So this stuff goes on so easily. And I'm going to build up maybe a little thicker closer to the bottom, because we're I'm trying to get a tapered body that's going to be thicker near the wing and thinner at the tail. Then I'm going to move this to the back of the tail again. And again, as I get here, I am going to go just barely past the thread and do a fairly soft wrap. And again, that's going to coax those tail fibers into staying together. Then we're going to build it up to a short ways behind the wing. So that came out pretty good. Now got a nice tapered body. Now, the one that we're doing the hackle collar with, as you can see, it's pretty parallel from the tip all the way, probably about better than halfway down the feather. So what we want to do is it starts getting wider at this point right here. And then by this point here, it's getting fuzzy. We don't want that fuzz. We don't need really where it's getting wider, but we do want a tie-in point. So as it starts getting wider, shortly before or shortly after it starts getting wider, we're going to snip that off. Pull a few fibers, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. Maybe not even that. Tie-in point, it's probably a little bit too much, and cut that off. So traditionally, when you're tying these things, I always learned to tie it with the dull side facing you. And the reason for that is, as you can see on the feather, the dull side, which is this side right here, you see how the feather kind of curves to my right. And each individual fiber is going to do that too. And I can't say exactly what the reason is, whether they think it floats better, or maybe it's a tradition from 100-year-old hackle where it made a difference. But so they recommend to do that so that the fibers are kind of edging forward. I don't do that. I do it just the opposite. I tie it with the shiny side in my direction. And as you start wrapping, every wrap is going to be very close to each other. They're going to be touching each other. And if I have the fibers facing forward, every time I wrap, you end up picking up some of those fibers and trapping them, and they all come forward to a big mess. Whereas if they're facing back, you're going to minimize that. So that's the way I do it. I'm going to tie it in with the shiny side facing me. And then bring the thread to right behind the eye. Get out my hackle pliers. And when you're tying a fly this size, a size 12, this feather is pretty stout. You're tying a size 18, 20, or heaven forbid a 22. Those feathers are very, very fragile. So you have to be super careful. You have to hold them tight enough so they remain straight. That way they will get placed right. But if you pull on them too much, or if you even get a twitch or a hiccup or whatever, you break that feather off so easy. So like I say, this is not going to be a problem here. So every turn is touching the one behind it. And I'm going right up till I touch the feathers. And you notice I touch the feathers and they just move forward. So this is a way to, if your feathers are too forward, whatever, you can coax them back, or you can coax them forward from these wraps that we're putting on right now. So the next one is going to go in front of the feathers. So I'm going to hold the wing back. I'm going to start the wraps there again. And then it's close enough that I've just coaxed those feathers back in again. So you can see as I'm working along, every once in a while, I'm catching some more fibers and they're coming forward. But if I had tied this on in the other direction, it would have been way more than that. I think there's any magic number of how much. I think the fuller it is, probably the better chance that it floats. And so I'm probably as far forward as I want to go, but say I wanted to make this a little bit fuller and I want to add some more bulk to that. So now I'm going to come back, and as I go around, I'm going to give it this zigzag motion all the way around, just like that. And again, the purpose of that is to minimize the fibers that are being captured. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to tie this off. So I'm right behind the eye. And what I'm going to do is I will lift the thread up and I'll hold the feather down. I'll drop the thread on the other side. The thread goes down. The feather comes up. Same thing. Thread goes up, feather goes down, thread goes down, feather goes up. And that's because these fibers will be moving up and down with it. And again, it's all to minimize the number of captured fibers that come under the knot. So do that one more time. We're going to cut that clean. And I do have some fibers that are in front here. So at this point, I'm going to hold the thread back so I don't cut it. And I am going to try to cut as many of those off as I can. You don't have to do that. You can actually take your fingers and hold those back and make the head. And that will force them back. But it will also force some other fibers back, and it just doesn't look as natural to me. Fish probably don't care, but aesthetically, it's much more pleasing. So in a couple of wraps, and then we are going to do a whip finish. Cut the thread, just using the scissors like a knife. And that's it. So it's not a daunting task to tie these, but for a beginner, it takes some practice. And the where you're going to have the biggest problem, excuse me, is with the wings. It just takes a while to get that together. So, you know, it's just kind of you keep at it and you get the hang of it eventually. When I tie these up, like I said, I tie them 14s, 16s. I always start with the 14s. I always tie flies by the dozen. And I do that because the first few flies are not going to look the way that I want them to look. So it takes 3, 4, 5 flies before I'm happy with the way they look. Bigger flies are easy to tie than smaller flies. So I'll do a dozen 14s, then I'll do a dozen 12s, the 14s, 16s. So the 14s are practice for the 16s, 16s are practice for the 18s, and the 18s would be practice for the 20s if you dare to do something like that. Yeah, so that's all there is to it.
Jim, that looks really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah,
Alan,
yeah, very nice. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Those are just pretty flies. I mean, when you think of fly fishing, that's what you think of. I mean, that is just the traditional good-looking fly.
Yeah, and you know what? What's his name? Tightline guys there that he's
Flagler? Tim Flagler?
Tim Flagler?
Thank you. Yes, Tim Flagler. He's got a video, and it's just called, you know, tying a size 18 blue wing olive. And let me show you. I tried one. Now this one's a 16, but let me show you what it looks like. Oops. Come on. So has no hackle collar. It's got no wings. The tail, he uses something that's called coque de lion, which is a feather. This is coque de lion. And you notice that the fibers are very stiff and very fine. So I'm assuming that he figures that will help it float. And then the wing material that he's using is something called ultra dry yarn, and it's made by a company, Fuller Mill or Fulling Mill. And I went to my fly shops. I went to both fly shops. They didn't have any, but I ended up using for the wing material, it's a parapost. And you just basically tie that in the place of the wing, and you run the dubbing up on either side, and you kind of compress it. And so when it comes undone, it's like a fan wing. That style would be similar to a fly that's called a comparadun. They have a hair wing on it, but this is like a really super simple fly to tie. And you know, I've never fished it, so I can't say by practice that it's going to float well and stuff like that. But if Tim Flagler says it's going to float, it's you know, I would never bet against him. So if he says it, you know, if it'll float, it'll float. And like I say, it's, if you want to tie something like that and you find the wings and the hackle daunting, try one of those. Go look up his video. It's great.
Very cool. And those do work. I was trying to find some of the floating I use on that, and it's, don't know where it's at. Like I said, I clean up my desk, and using that on that paracord that you got is kind of like Bonnie cord, and I use that a lot. And if you at least treat it before, that stuff floats forever. I'm trying to think
what are you talking? Treating it with what?
I'm trying to look for it. I don't see it, but it's some watershed, I think. It's permanent water displacement. I know Hargroves and Feathercraft both have it. You just can't put it on at the stream. You got to do it the night before. They say you should give it like 12 to 24 hours, and man, that'll float forever. And that's what I kind of use. And I got tons of Bonnie cord if anyone wants that as well. So.
Yeah, I just use that gink
floating.
Yeah. And it lasts pretty good. You just watch because I use that was it that yarn indicator?
Yeah.
And I use it on that, and it's good for 20-30 minutes, and then you gotta kind of shake the yarn off a little bit and reapply a little bit, and you're good.
Yeah. So cool. All right, thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. That was good.
Quite welcome.
Now, let me see. We're at 7 o'clock, so I'll make it quick. Carl will tie for us next week. I'll get emails out to Jim, Carl, Ken about the casting class, get you guys some information. Thanks for everyone coming. While I was sitting there, I actually thought about that one last tip that they had for us, and I love using midge flash and all that, but it's always tried hard with these packaging and all that. A straw is what someone had shown. So they feed it through a straw, and then they stack real easy in one area. And if you need the strand, you just take your bodkin and pull one strand out and cut that strand out, and everything else is there. So that's the difference between the packaging. You could just stack them all. And so it's like almost like putting pens in a pencil case. So that was pretty neat.
How do you put it in there? How do you stack it in there?
Basically with this one, it actually comes with a zip tie on these. And so let me take this one out.
Go ahead and highlight yourself, please.
Yeah. So basically, as you can see, these come in and it's got a zip tie. So you just kind of bring this down and then feed that through the straw. And then that's what so there's a zip tie. This one's kind of white, so you can't see it. But you just take your bodkin and you just, take one strand out so they're not, everywhere. And right there comes out a strand. And I cut off one strand so you can see one strand. The rest stay in there and you don't have a mess like this trying to find it. And then you could put them in a pencil case then and you could have probably a dozen. So that was the other thing that I thought was kind of neat from that tips call that they had on Thursday. So we'll have to do that because that was kind of fun. So that's it. If you guys need anything, please reach out to me. I'm going to get on some emails now for the rod build class. So that's it. And I'll see you next week. And Carl will be tying for us.
Okay.
And
Hey,
try
Walt, I know you were working with some of the guys on building their rods last year. Do you by any chance have either any of the wrapping jigs or the drying motors? You're muted. You're muted.
muted.
You're muted. You're muted.
There you
How's
go.
that?
There you go. Better.
There you go.
Okay, I have one motor that is mine that I bought. And then
Do
what
you
else
need?
do you need?
I'll just say
No, I'm looking for
anything
things
that
that,
belongs to the program. Do you have any
for the
program?
program. Yeah.
What I had, I gave you the other day.
Okay.
Okay.
But if you need my motor,
No, we're fine. We're
No,
just trying to
no.
make sure we got all our program stuff. That's all.
Yeah. No, we're missing a couple. I'm just trying to track them down.
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I'll let you guys go. You guys take care and we'll see you soon.
Have a good week.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.